Hello everyone and welcome to a new video on the Colombians Football Report. Today we're going to be talking about day 17 of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. But before we get into the video, 83% of the people who watch my videos are not subscribed to the channel. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so that I can continue to grow and make better content in the future. Now let's get to the games. And the first two games that took place today were Panama versus England and Croatia versus Ghana. We'll talk about Panama versus England first because this is a much quicker recap because there's not really much to go over here. Panama were already eliminated from the tournament before this game happened, and England just needed to win this game in order to top the group. And in the end, that is exactly what happened. England beat Panama 2-0. Wasn't the most convincing display, but they still got the win, which is the most important thing at the World Cup for any team. Now, in the first half, England were trying to break down Panama, but they just couldn't. Panama had a very good low block, and every now and again they would go on counterattacks. Nothing too dangerous, but still they would manage to go high up the field. And something to remember is that this game actually happened 8 years ago in the 2018 World Cup, and England won that game 6-1. But this time they only won 2-0, and it was 0-0 at halftime. So it just shows that Panama have definitely improved in the last few years, and it was clear from that first half. They were defending very well. England couldn't break them down, and it was a frustrating 0-0 score at halftime for England. However, in the second half, they went with a bit more intensity. Mosquera had to make a fantastic save on Harry Kane. And despite Panama's defense having a good game, especially Cordoba, number 3 from Norwich City, he's a very good center back, one to keep an eye on for the future. But despite Panama doing well defensively, eventually England will score thanks to a corner kick from Bukayo Saka, which found its way to Jude Bellingham, who just kind of like volleyed the ball into the back of the net. A very good finish from him. That was not easy to do, but he scored the goal to calm down England's nerves, and now for sure it looked like they were going to top of the group, especially when only 5 minutes after Jude Bellingham scored, he got an assist after an amazing cross from him on the left hand side to Harry Kane so that he could finish the ball and score his third World Cup goal. Very good goal. And England were now 2-0 up. And they were in cruise control for the rest of the game. Now, near the end, Panama, they did have the ball a bit more. They wanted to score a goal, and they managed to actually score a goal, but it was ruled out for a very obvious offside. But England, they still held on to the win, and they won 2-0. Meanwhile, Panama, they got eliminated, losing in every game, despite being competitive in every game, and they are also the only team at this World Cup to go home without a single goal scored. Next game we'll talk about is Croatia versus Ghana. This game ended 2-1. Croatia needed to get a result in this game to secure qualification. Ghana had already advanced to the next round. However, Ghana, they did want to seal second place, but they couldn't do that because they lost 2-1 to Croatia, which meant that Croatia went from third to second and Ghana went from second to third. And I would say it was a deserved win for Croatia. Even though it was relatively close at times, I do think in the end, Croatia were slightly better. The first 30 minutes or so, it felt like both teams were kind of in a stalemate with one another. But then came the incredible long strike from Susic, the midfielder from Inter Milan. It was a fantastic finish from outside the box. He just blasted it into the bottom corner, a low driven shot. There was nothing the goalkeeper could do to save that. And it was 1-0 for Croatia. And then in the second half, Ghana, they went attacking a bit more. They tried to get themselves back equalized, but they just couldn't do it. And whenever they did have shots, Livakovic was always there to respond. That was until Ghana had a set piece in the 73rd minute. A brilliant cross from Nauma made his way all the way to Lucasen, who's actually a half brother of Brian Brobby, the Netherlands player. He managed to score. Now, the goal was originally given as offside, but upon replay, it was very obvious that he was not in an offside position. So they quickly gave the goal. They corrected their decision, and now Ghana had their equalizer. And I say at that point, it was deserved because Ghana in the second half, they were trying a bit more than in the first half, and they were certainly getting closer to Croatia's goal. So when it was 1-1, that meant that Ghana were second with 5 points and Croatia were third with 4 points. Now, this would still qualify both teams, but it would still have a huge change in the knockout stages. Granted, both of these teams ended up with very tough opponents in the next round, but we'll talk about that later. But Croatia, they had a corner, and Luka Modric he swung it in for Vlasic, who headed the ball into the back of the net. Great header from him. And now Croatia were second place with 6 points, and Ghana went down to third with 4 points. But this will still qualify both teams. And near the end, Ghana were obviously attacking more so that they could try to get the equalizer. But Modric near the end was very good defensively. He's 40 years old, yet for those last few minutes, he looked like a defensive midfielder in his prime. He is truly a legend of the game, man. There is no one like Luka Modric. And in the end, Ghana couldn't get the equalizing goal, and Croatia held on to win 2-1 and to finish second place in the group. Meanwhile, Ghana finished third, but they still qualified as one of the best third place teams. And they also probably have a slightly easier bracket than Croatia do. But now here are the standings. Panama were already eliminated before today's game, but they finished last with 0 points, 0 goals scored. But they were competitive in every game. So I do think we'll see Panama back in the World Cup very soon. And like I mentioned, Ghana finished third, Croatia second, and England first. But all three of those teams are in the knockout stages now. Now England, their reward for finishing first is that they play against the third place team, and that third place team is the DR Congo. And the DR Congo could give them problems, but England should still be able to win that game. And Croatia, they finished second, so they face the team that finishes second in Group K, and that was Portugal. Meanwhile, Ghana, they finished third, and they will face Colombia in the round of 32. Now it's time to talk about the game we were all waiting for, Colombia versus Portugal. This was the battle for first place in Group K. Colombia only needed a draw in this game to finish top of the group, but obviously a win would also do. And Portugal, they needed to win this game. But in the end, the game ended 0-0. But despite the fact that there were no goals, it was still a very exciting game. Both teams had their chances. Diogo Costa made many good saves today for Portugal. And Colombia, Camilo Vargas, our goalkeeper, he made a brilliant save on Bruno Fernandes. He got a lot of criticism, especially from me, after the first game, where he made a huge mistake against Uzbekistan. But the save he made on Bruno Fernandes today was truly brilliant. One of the saves of the tournament. And, as a Colombian, obviously, I always feel passionate when I talk about my national team. And I think today Colombia played a brilliant game. We were very, very good today. We deserved to win this game. Portugal got very lucky today that they have a very good goalkeeper in Diogo Costa, who made some very good saves today. And also the fact that we just couldn't finish. Cordova had a chance, but it was well saved by Costa. John Arias had some chances, but they were all saved. Luis Suarez, he had some chances off the bench, and he just missed them. But despite those misses, this might be a hot take, but I still have trust in Luis Suarez. I still have a lot of faith in him. Because despite those misses, I think he still played well off the bench. He was pressing high. He was getting himself involved. And I think soon the goals will come. But yeah, despite the fact that we couldn't score today, we still managed to get the draw, which is the result that we needed to finish top of the group. And everyone was fantastic today. Like I mentioned, Camilo Vargas, he was fantastic. He made a brilliant save, and he also made some good saves as well. Machado was solid. He replaced Mojica today because if Mojica got a yellow card, he would be suspended for the next round. But Machado, he definitely did the job. And Santi Arias as well, he did the job in the right back position. I don't know why Daniel Munoz didn't start. I honestly, there's no reason as to why that happened. But Santi Arias, he still played very well today. The two center backs, Lukumi and Davinson Sanchez, were absolutely brilliant. They were a brick wall. No one could get past them. For me, Davinson Sanchez was man of the match, but Lukumi was also very, very good. Gustavo Puerta, he was amazing once again. He has been our star young player at this World Cup. Just such a good midfielder. He could do it all. He can pass, he can pressure, he can win the ball back, he can make good chances. He's just the all-round midfielder, and he's only 22. Lerma, he was pretty good. Then he came off early because if he got a yellow card in this game, he will be suspended for the next game. But yeah, he didn't get a yellow card, so he'll be available for the next game. John Arias was spectacular. I really liked the way he played today. He was dribbling past players, and he was just running up and down the field at all times. What an underrated player. Luis Diaz had an underwhelming performance, but it was good to see James Rodriguez perform well. Today he played like the old James Rodriguez. He played like the James Rodriguez at the Copa America 2 years ago. I have been very critical of him. I think that I have said many times I don't think he should start anymore. But today he played like the way I wanted to see him play. And I hope that he can continue to show this form. And Cordoba, I think he was decent. I think his ability to hold up the ball was very nice. I just would have liked to see him make more shots. And all the substitutes, I think they all performed quite well when they came on. Especially Juanfer Quintero. He's just such an excellent player. He always has that vision that nobody else has. And yeah, we dominated Portugal. They only really had two real good chances, and that was when Vargas made that insane save on Bruno Fernandes, and when Ronaldo was 1-on-1 with the keeper, but he missed it, but it was offside anyway. Meanwhile, we had multiple good chances, and we really should have won because at the last minute there was an offside decision that went against us and against Davinson Sanchez. But in my opinion, it wasn't offside. It was a ridiculous offside decision. Now you're in an offside position if your toenail is offside, which to me is just ridiculous. They robbed us of a moment that we deserve because we deserve to win that game. But at the end of the day, I'm not too mad about it because the draw it still feels like a win because we still needed just the draw to finish top of the group, and we deserve this result. We deserve to be top of the group. Portugal were not good enough, and that was the reality. But I'm very hopeful for the Colombia team now, and hopefully we can make a deep run. Now, time to talk about the DR Congo versus Uzbekistan. And I can't lie, this game, I barely watched it because I was very focused on the Colombia Portugal game. But I can still give some analysis from this because I was still able to tell what was going on in this game on another screen. And Uzbekistan got off to a very fast start. They scored a goal that was disallowed in like the first few seconds of the game. And then in the 10th minute, Shomurodov with a brilliant chipped goal. It was like a chip on the volley. It was absolutely spectacular. What a finish from him. And he gave Uzbekistan the 1-0 lead. But Uzbekistan, they needed to win this game by like 6 goals if they wanted to qualify as one of the best third place teams. So it's highly unlikely that they were going to do that. But DR Congo, they had to win in order to qualify. So that goal was very bad for DR Congo because they were facing an already eliminated Uzbekistan team and they were already 1-0 down and they were playing worse and it was a must-win game. The draw was not good enough. They needed to win this game. But then they would eventually equalize, but their goal was disallowed because of a very soft foul in the build-up. I don't know why some of these referees are giving very soft fouls in the build-up lately. I think in the beginning of the tournament we saw soft fouls not being given, but now they're starting to get given, and I really don't think it should be like that. And basically, after Uzbekistan scored, it was all DR Congo. They were just all trying to get the equalizer, but they couldn't do it in the first half. And it looked like the DR Congo were going to waste a huge opportunity to go to the knockout stages for the first time in their history. But in the second half, they upped their intensity. They kept attacking more and more, but they just were not precise in any of their shots or any of their attacks. Until came the moment when Joan Visa, the star man for the DR Congo, he managed to win a penalty. And it was a sigh of relief because time was running out for the DR Congo and they needed something. And thanks to Wisa's brilliance, he managed to win a penalty and he took the penalty himself and he scored it. It was 1-1. So now the DR Congo, they had 22 minutes to score one more goal that will qualify them for the next round. They brought on a lot of attacking players, obviously, to go and try to look for that goal. And the goal that would win them the game ended up being from two of their substitutes. Elia, he had a shot from outside the box that was blocked, but his shot was deflected and it managed to find its way in the path of Mayele, and he managed to just toe poke the ball into the back of the net. He got there just before the goalkeeper could, and he gave the DR Congo the 2-1 lead with only 12 minutes left. And that was the goal that they needed. That was the goal that was going to qualify them to the next round of the World Cup. And for the rest of the game, they actually managed to control it. It seemed like Uzbekistan were kind of shell shocked, like they just couldn't do anything after the DR Congo scored their second goal. So the DR Congo were quite comfortable, and that's how they managed to score the third goal in stoppage time to seal the deal and to give DR Congo the qualification to the knockout stages of a World Cup for the first time ever. And it was thanks to Joan Visa who scored a brace today, and he had the ball and he just managed to hit it from outside the box into the corner of the goal. It was a fantastic goal from him, and what a moment for the DR Congo. They managed to make it to the knockout stages of the World Cup, and this team has a very bright future. Meanwhile, Uzbekistan, they got eliminated, but I think that they will learn a lot from playing in their first ever World Cup, and in 4 years' time, should they qualify again, I think they'll be much better than they were this year. But now this is how the group ended. Colombia with 7 points in first place, Portugal second place with 5 points, and the DR Congo third place with 4 points. Uzbekistan finished last with 0 points and a -9 goal difference. And we already talked about this before in the other group, but the games are already confirmed. Colombia, like I mentioned, they will face Ghana. Portugal, they will face Croatia, and the DR Congo will face England. It'll be very interesting to see what the DR Congo could do against England, if they could complicate things for them. Colombia will be heavy favorites against Ghana. Obviously, they should still be careful. They can't underestimate any team, especially since Ghana, they did tie against England in this World Cup. But of course, Colombia will still be favorites. And Portugal versus Croatia is definitely one of the standout games of the 2026 World Cup round of 32. That means that in that game it's confirmed that one of Luka Modric or Cristiano Ronaldo will play their last World Cup game, which is just incredible. So let's just see what happens. It should be a dramatic set of games. Now we have Group J, and this game between Jordan and Argentina was basically a glorified friendly match because Argentina already secured first place and Jordan already secured last place. So both of these teams were just playing to complete the calendar, and Argentina, they rotated the vast majority of their team. I mean, the only regular starters who played today were Dibu Martinez and I guess the two strikers, Alvarez and Lautaro. You could say that they're both regulars. But besides that, the rest of the team was entirely rotated. And the interesting thing is that even Jordan made some rotations, not too many. They still had many of their best players still there, but they had Tamari on the bench. But it was obviously expected that Argentina would win this game, and they did that. They won 3-1. Very comfortable win for them. In the first half, they were very dominant and they managed to get an early goal after a brilliant free kick from Lo Celso. Then Argentina went on an attack and it resulted in one of their players getting kicked in the head, and that was called as a penalty after a VAR check. And Lautaro Martinez, he scored it, and that was actually his first World Cup goal. And obviously, you would expect a player of his caliber to have more goals in the World Cup. But let's see if that goal that he scored from the penalty spot against Jordan will help his confidence a little bit. And Argentina, they were dominant. But in the second half, Jordan actually got off to a very fast start. They brought on Tomati off the bench, and he managed to score. It was a shock moment. Jordan, they managed to bring one back against Argentina. It was a great finish from Tamati as well. So very honorable fight from Jordan in this game. They also had a few more shots, nothing too dangerous, but still. But in the 60th minute, Messi came on, and while he didn't really do much when he came on, he still had a memorable moment because Messi, he just always needs to have a memorable moment in these games. He had a free kick and he managed to score it. Now, the goalkeeper should have done better, I think, for that free kick. And I do think the wall was suspect, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't a good goal for Messi. It was still far out, and he needed to get the proper finish in, and he did that. And this is why Messi is considered by many to be the king of the free kicks. And I honestly have to agree because Messi, I think there's no other player in football history that has more free kicks than Messi, or at least more free kicks at the top level than Messi. So yeah, despite an honorable fight from Jordan, Argentina still won 3-1, and they continued their very good form into the next game where they will face Cabo Verde. But now it's time to talk about the most insane game that took place today, and it was Algeria versus Austria. And what was the situation before this game? Well, I'll explain to you. The situation was that if there was a loser in this game, as in one of these teams lose the game, they will get eliminated from the World Cup and Iran will go through. But if they tied, they will both qualify to the next round and Iran will get eliminated from the World Cup. So that's basically how that worked. And the first half was very back and forth. Both teams were definitely going at each other. It didn't feel like a game that was fixed so that both teams could draw against each other so that they could both go through. And eventually it was Austria who scored first. It was probably slightly deserved because I think they were creating a little bit more by that point in the game. and it was Arnautovic after a brilliant long ball. He managed to kind of like bundle the ball in. It was still a very big mistake from the goalkeeper. He should have done a lot better there. But Arnautovic, he scored his third World Cup goal. However, after that, Algeria, they started trying more to equalize the game. And they would get their equalizer after a very interesting goal. The ball kind of like hit the corner flag, and everyone thought it was going out, but it actually managed to stay in. So some Algerian and Austrian players were fighting near that corner flag for that ball, and Belgali, he managed to get it, and he just made a brilliant skill move when he got into the box and he just smashed the ball in with his weak foot. It was a very good goal, and Algeria were now equalized. So this result was a good result for both teams because that means both teams will qualify. However, despite that, that didn't mean that both teams they just let the game end in a draw. In the second half, I think both teams went with even more intensity than they did in the first half. And it was very exciting to watch. And eventually, after some good play down the right from Konrad Leimer, he crossed it in for Savitzer and he hit it first time and he scored a brilliant goal. Very well hit. There was nothing the Algerian goalkeeper could do to save that one, and now Algeria were getting eliminated at that stage. Austria were going through, Iran were going through, and Algeria was getting eliminated as one of the four worst third place teams. However, that would not last long. After some great play from Alwars on down the left wing, he managed to pass the ball to Riyad Mahrez, who was there to tap it in, and he scored his first World Cup goal in this year's edition, and now things were tied 2-2. And despite the fact that the draw was the result that both teams needed, it looked like in that moment that both teams they didn't care about that and they were happy to eliminate each other. But then came the water break, and when the water break ended, the game completely changed. The same intensity that we saw for like 70 minutes, it was no longer there. The game started to look very fishy, like something was not right because Algeria they started to have the ball and they were just passing it between their center backs. And Austria were not really pressuring, and it kind of looked like both teams they made a pact to draw the game so that they would both advance and eliminate Iran as a result. So basically, a repeat of the 1982 disgrace of Gijón. And the interesting thing is that in the disgrace of Gijón, it was Austria who was playing against Germany, and they made a pact with Germany to eliminate Algeria. So now in this game, it looks like Algeria went from the victim 44 years ago to now being the villains because it looked like they made a pact with Austria to tie the game because those last 20 minutes they were just passing the ball around doing nothing and Austria were not even pressing them. It just looked like they were happy with the draw. And I know Iranians for sure, they must have been looking at their screen very disappointed because despite both teams truly playing at their best for the first 70 minutes, the last 20 minutes, they just kind of like stopped playing. It looked like they let the clock run down. But then out of nowhere, when it looked like the game was just going to end 2-2 with both teams shamelessly celebrating a draw together, out of nowhere, Algeria just formed an attack, their only attack in the final 20 minutes, and they managed to score it after a good pass from Alwar found Riyad Mahrez, who finished it into the corner of the goal. And now that meant that Algeria were eliminating Austria from the World Cup, so it looked like revenge for what happened in 1982. And it looked like wild scenes because it looked like Algeria and Austria made a pact to tie the game, and then out of nowhere, Algeria, they just managed to betray them and score the goal that would eliminate Austria. But only a couple minutes after that happened, some bad defending led to a cross being put in, which was then kept in by Gregoric, and and it went right to the direction of Kalajic, and he hit the ball into the back of the net to make it 3-3 and to qualify Austria to the next round at the last minute when they were getting eliminated. And that goal would also eliminate Iran in the process. Both Algeria and Austria would go through. It was an unbelievable end to the game. It went from looking like match fixing was going on to the biggest betrayal of all time before Austria saving themselves right at the last second. Like that was just a wild end to the game, a wild end to the group stage of the World Cup. This is a game that will be remembered forever. Already, I want to say this is a top 5 game in the World Cup. Like even when the knockout stages are over, I don't think there will be 5 games better than this one because this game was just so dramatic. and it did have a little bit of a feel of a knockout game, but it still doesn't change the fact that I'm still very doubtful on those 20 minutes where Algeria and Austria basically did nothing, because that still looks very fishy to me. It still looked very similar to what happened in 1982 in the disgrace of Gijón, but I guess we will never know the true answer as to what happened in this game. But man, games like this are just why this sport is the best sport in the world, because literally anything could happen. So now, after looking at that dramatic ending, let's now look at what the group ended like. Argentina, it was already known that they would face Cabo Verde in the next round. They will be heavy favorites for that game. That's probably the biggest mismatch in the history of a World Cup knockout game. A three-time World Cup champion coming up against the smallest country to ever make it to a knockout stages. Meanwhile, Austria, they will face Spain, and Austria, they didn't really have a choice, because if they lost this game, they would get eliminated, and if they drew or won this game, they would face Spain. So they had no way of facing Switzerland. Meanwhile, Algeria, they did have a bit more flexibility, because they knew if they drew, they would face Switzerland. If they won, they would face Spain, and if they lost, they would get eliminated. So for Algeria, the draw is probably the perfect result. Even though they don't finish in the top two, they still get a slightly easier game against Switzerland rather than Spain. And meanwhile, Jordan, we already knew this. They were already eliminated. And now here's a look at the third place table. Obviously, we already knew the DR Congo, Sweden, Ecuador, Ghana, Bosnia, Paraguay, and Senegal were already through. But the last battle was just between Algeria and Austria versus Iran. And because of that last minute equalizer from Austria, Iran managed to get eliminated. It was truly heartbreaking, because if Algeria won that game, Austria, they would have been in this table instead of Algeria, and they would have been on 3 points with a -1 goal difference, while Iran would have been on 3 points but with a 0 as their goal difference. So they would have been ahead of Austria, and Austria would have been eliminated. But instead, that last minute equalizer from Austria put Algeria back into third place, and Algeria, since they have 4 points, they advanced as one of the best third place teams, while Iran just missed out. However, it is insane to see 7 teams in this World Cup that finished third place finish with 4 points. I feel like that's very rare. We never see things like that happen in the World Cup. Usually, a team like Iran, who finished with 3 points and a goal difference of 0, they would still qualify as the best third place team. But this year, they didn't. And it just goes to show that while this format still has its critics, there's still some insane moments, and there's still a lot of competitiveness between the teams. And also, the results that happened today meant that South Korea and Scotland were already officially eliminated. And Uruguay, they were eliminated yesterday. We already talked about that. So now this is the full bracket for the World Cup. This picture is taken from the official FIFA World Cup page. And there are some very tasty fixtures here. On one side of the bracket, we have Germany facing Paraguay, France facing Sweden, South Africa facing Canada, which will be the first knockout game. That game will happen tomorrow, and we'll talk about that game. That'll be the only game we'll talk about tomorrow, because that's the only game that's taking place on that day. Netherlands versus Morocco, Portugal versus Croatia, Spain versus Austria, the United States versus Bosnia and Herzegovina, Belgium versus Senegal. Meanwhile, on the other side of the bracket, we have Brazil versus Japan, Ivory Coast versus Norway, Mexico versus Ecuador, England versus the DR Congo, Argentina versus Cabo Verde, Australia versus Egypt, Switzerland versus Algeria, and my national team, Colombia, against Ghana. So after taking a look at this bracket, who do you think will be the world champion? Who do you think will reach the semifinals or quarterfinals? Which team will make it far? Who will be the dark horse? Let me know in the comments. This World Cup is shaping up to be an insane tournament, and hopefully the knockout stages can deliver, and that we will continue to see more insane games, more memorable moments, and more matches that end very high scoring. And that will do it for today's video. Make sure you leave a like on the video if you enjoyed this video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel like I mentioned earlier. I have nothing more to say, and have a good night, everyone.